Commander Eric Barnes stood at the viewport of Mining Outpost Delta 7, his eyes fixed on the stars. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Proxima Centauri. 3 weeks since he had watched Earth's proud fleet burn against the superior weapons of the Vesperi Dominion. Now all that remained were 42 survivors on this remote mining station, hiding among the asteroids. "Commander, we've got the comms working again," said Jack Rivers, his systems technician. The young man's face was smudged with grease, his eyes hollow from lack of sleep. Barnes nodded and followed Rivers to the station's small command center. The equipment here was old, mining gear repurposed for military use. Nothing like the advanced systems aboard his destroyed vessel. The screen flickered to life, revealing the tired face of Admiral Susan Wright. Her uniform was torn, and a bandage covered her left temple. "Barnes, thank God you're alive," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "How many made it out with you?" 42, ma'am. Mostly crew from the Dauntless, plus some station personnel." Wright closed her eyes briefly. "That's more than most outposts can report. The Vesperi hit us harder than we could have imagined. Earth's outer colonies have fallen. We're down to scattered resistance cells now." Barnes felt his stomach tighten. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "Survive. Gather resources. We can't match their ships with what we have left. Our shipyards are destroyed, our factories occupied." She leaned closer to the screen. "But we can't give up. I need every officer showing what humans do best, making something from nothing." The transmission began to break up, static cutting through her words. "Admiral, we're losing you," Barnes said. "Coming your way. Sensors picked up. Patrol near. Sector. Stay hidden." The transmission died. Barnes turned to Rivers. "Get that back." Rivers typed frantically. "I can't, sir. They're jamming all frequencies now." Chief Maya Lopez, the outpost's head miner, burst into the room. "Commander, we've got incoming. Vesperi scout ships, at least 3 of them." Barnes ran to the sensor display. The red dots of enemy vessels approached steadily. They had maybe 30 minutes before detection. "Options?" he asked, looking around at the frightened faces of his makeshift crew. "We hide deeper in the asteroid field," suggested Rivers. "Power down everything and hope they pass by." Lopez shook her head. "They're using thermal scanners now. They'll find us." Barnes stared at the display, watching the enemy approach. Then he noticed something on the station schematics. The massive salvage yard attached to the outpost, filled with mining drones, broken shuttles, and scrap metal from a dozen different vessels. "What if we don't hide?" Barnes said slowly. Everyone stared at him. "Sir?" Rivers asked. Barnes pointed to the salvage yard. "We have 42 people with engineering and space experience. We have tools, materials, and enough anger to fuel a sun." Lopez frowned. "What exactly are you suggesting, Commander?" "They destroyed our ships because they were better armed, better armored. But we know their weaknesses now. We've seen how they fight." Barnes straightened his shoulders. "I'm suggesting we build our own ship, something they've never seen before. From mining equipment and scrap metal." Rivers looked doubtful. "The Vesperi think they've won because they destroyed our factories and shipyards," Barnes said. "They don't understand that humans have been building things from scraps since we first picked up stones as tools." Barnes walked around the room, looking each person in the eye. "We can hide today and be found tomorrow, or we can start fighting back. I say we take everything in that salvage yard and turn it into something deadly." Lopez was the first to nod. "My miners can strip and rebuild anything. If you've got a design in mind, we can make it work." One by one, the others agreed. Even those who looked skeptical seemed to stand taller, their eyes brighter with renewed purpose. "We have 30 minutes before those scouts get too close," Barnes said, his voice firm with new determination. "Let's move everything deeper into the asteroid field and set up a workshop. By the time the Vesperi realize what we're doing, it'll be too late." As the crew rushed to their tasks, Barnes took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was on the brink of extinction. But not if he could help it. Not while they still had hands to build, minds to think, and scrap to forge into a weapon. 3 months passed quickly inside the asteroid field. What had started as a desperate idea had grown into a hidden shipyard. The crew now numbered 68, as survivors from other outposts found their way to Barnes and his team. Chief Engineer Olivia Tanner wiped sweat from her forehead as she examined the strange-looking engine assembly. Before the war, she had designed mining equipment. Now she was turning those same drills and thrusters into something that could power a warship. "It's ugly, but it works," she told Barnes as he approached. These mining engines were made to move slowly through asteroid fields. "I've stripped away all the safety limiters. We'll get about 3 times the thrust the manufacturers intended." Barnes nodded. "Will it be enough to match Vesperi ships?" "Not in a straight race," Tanner admitted. "But we're not building a racing ship. We're building something that can take a hit and hit back harder." A commotion near the outer defense perimeter interrupted them. Lieutenant Peter Kelly had returned from his raid. His small team used modified mining shuttles painted black to slip past Vesperi patrols and steal what they needed. Kelly jumped from his shuttle, his face tired but smiling. "We hit the supply depot at Ganymede. Got the computer cores you wanted, plus some unexpected passengers." Behind him, 5 people in dirty clothes stepped out. One woman stood apart from the others. She was thin with short gray hair and alert eyes that immediately began examining everything around her. "Commander Barnes?" she asked, walking forward. "I'm Dr. Diane Allen. I led the Weapons Research Division at Europa Station before it fell." Barnes shook her hand. "We've heard of your work, Doctor. Your designs for the plasma cannons were remarkable." "Those designs are outdated now," she said, her voice firm. "The Vesperi shields adapted to them within weeks. But I was working on something new when they attacked. Something they won't be able to counter so easily." That night, the crew gathered in what they called the War Room, a hollowed-out asteroid connected to their main work area. Engineers, miners, and soldiers sat together as Dr. Allen explained her idea. "Fusion reactors create waste energy we normally vent into space," she said, drawing diagrams on a salvaged tablet. "But that energy can be captured and focused. With the right containment field, we could create a weapon more powerful than anything humanity has built before." Steve Crawford, one of the miners, shook his head. "Sounds like fantasy to me. We're hiding in rocks, using broken tools, and you're talking about super weapons." Others murmured in agreement. Barnes watched as doubt spread across faces that had only recently found hope. Tanner stood up. 3 months ago, you all thought building any ship was impossible. Now the hull is half complete." She pointed at the tablet. "If Dr. Allen says it can work, I believe her." "The catch is the containment field," Dr. Allen said. "We need materials we don't have, and the calculations must be perfect." Lieutenant Kelly leaned forward. "Tell me what you need, and I'll find it." Later, as the others left to return to work, Barnes stood alone with Tanner and Dr. Allen. "Can we really do this?" he asked quietly. Dr. Allen studied the station plans. There was a research facility orbiting Jupiter. If it survived, they might have prototypes of the containment field technology. "That's deep in Vesperi territory now," Barnes warned. "Everything is Vesperi territory now," Tanner replied. "But they don't patrol everywhere at once. They don't have the ships." Barnes looked through the viewport at the partial frame of their vessel. It was a strange shape, with sections that didn't match and materials of different colors. But it was growing every day. "Lieutenant Kelly," Barnes called over the comm. "Prepare your team. You're going to Jupiter." As the others left, Barnes remained at the viewport. The odds were impossible. The plan was desperate, but across the asteroid field, 68 humans were building a ship that shouldn't exist. And soon, the Vesperi would learn what humans could do with only scrap metal and determination. Lieutenant Kelly's small team prepared their modified mining shuttle for the dangerous mission to Jupiter. They packed light, weapons, emergency supplies, and tools for extracting the technology they needed. 4 people would go: Kelly, 2 security officers, and communications specialist Frank Martinez. The research station orbits in Jupiter's shadow, Dr. Allen explained, showing them maps on a cracked display screen. It uses the radiation belts for power. If it's still there, the Vesperi might have overlooked it. Barnes watched as the team made final checks. "You have 48 hours. If you're not back by then, we'll assume the worst." Kelly nodded. "We'll be back, sir, with what we need." The shuttle departed silently, its engines modified to run cool and leave minimal exhaust trails. It would take them 12 hours to reach Jupiter, using the asteroid belt as cover for most of the journey. Back at the shipyard, Tanner faced a crisis. The hull design wasn't working. She stared at the twisted metal frame, frustration clear on her face. "The materials don't match," she explained to Barnes. "We're using mining-grade metals with scraps from 6 different types of ships. The stress points are failing." Barnes looked at the incomplete ship. "Can we fix it?" "Not with what we know now," Tanner admitted. "We need a completely different approach." For 3 days, Tanner barely slept. She tested and rejected a dozen designs. The crew watched anxiously as their chief engineer grew more frustrated and exhausted. Meanwhile, Kelly's team reached Jupiter's orbit. The massive gas giant loomed before them, its swirling storms visible even from a distance. Using Jupiter's magnetic field as cover, they approached the research station. "It's still here," Martins whispered, relief in his voice. "And the power signatures are minimal. Might be abandoned." They docked carefully at an emergency airlock. Inside, the station was dark and cold. Emergency lights cast red shadows across empty corridors. "Looks like they evacuated in a hurry," Kelly said, examining scattered personal items. The team moved through the station, following Dr. Allen's directions to the main research lab. The doors were sealed, but Martinez bypassed the security systems. Inside, they found rows of equipment, untouched since the evacuation. There, Martins pointed to a sealed container labeled Containment Field Prototype. As they secured the technology, Martins discovered something else, a data core still running on emergency power. "Sir, I think this is the project's complete research files," he said, connecting to the system. Dr. Allen was right. They did solve the containment problem. But there's more. He downloaded the files quickly. Back at the shipyard, Tanner sat alone in the dark, staring at a broken piece of Vesperi technology, debris from a destroyed ship that Kelly had brought back from an earlier mission. Its structure was unlike anything humans built, with strange angles and patterns that seemed to follow no logic. As Tanner turned the piece in her hands, something clicked in her tired mind. The patterns weren't random. They were fractals, repeating shapes that distributed force along multiple paths simultaneously. She jumped up and ran to her workstation, fingers flying across the keyboard as she input new calculations. The simulation showed a hull design unlike any human vessel, asymmetrical, with overlapping plates that resembled scales more than traditional ship armor. "That's it," she whispered. "That's how we do it." When Kelly's team returned with the containment field technology, they found a renewed energy throughout the shipyard. Tanner's breakthrough had solved their structural problems and given them something else, a potential advantage. "The hull design isn't just stronger," she explained to Barnes and Dr. Allen. "The fractal pattern should scatter sensor readings. It might make us harder to detect." Dr. Allen examined the containment field prototype. "This will work with my energy weapon design. We can channel the waste fusion energy through this field to create a directed energy beam of unprecedented power." For the first time since the Vesperi invasion, Barnes felt a genuine spark of hope. They weren't just building a ship from scrap anymore. They were building something new, something the enemy had never seen before. "We need a name for her," Barnes said, looking at the evolving ship design. "Phoenix," Tanner replied immediately. rising from the ashes. 6 months after Commander Barnes first proposed building a ship, the Phoenix was taking shape. What had begun as a desperate plan now drew survivors from across the solar system. The hidden shipyard housed nearly 200 people, all working to create something that might save humanity. The ship itself was unlike anything humans had built before. Its hull consisted of overlapping plates in a fractal pattern, giving it a scaled appearance. The engines, modified mining thrusters, were arranged asymmetrically, another idea from Tanner that would make the ship highly maneuverable despite its size. "It's beautiful," said Lisa Reeves, a former cargo pilot who had arrived with the latest group of survivors. She stood next to Barnes, watching as workers attached the final sections of the outer hull. "It's different," Barnes replied. "And different might be what we need to survive." Among the newest arrivals was Security Chief Melissa Carter. Before the invasion, she had served in Earth's Special Forces, training troops to fight in zero gravity. Within days of her arrival, she had identified serious security flaws in their operation. "You've done amazing work building this ship," she told Barnes during her first inspection. "But your perimeter defenses wouldn't stop a determined scout patrol." "We've been lucky," Barnes admitted. "Luck runs out," Carter said firmly. "Give me 20 people and a week, and I'll make this place invisible to Vesperi sensors." Carter kept her promise. She set up a network of sensor jammers using parts from broken mining drones. She established patrol routes and trained teams to respond to different threats. Under her guidance, the shipyard's security tightened significantly. Inside the Phoenix, Dr. Allen and her team worked on the weapon system now called Sunforge. The containment field technology from Jupiter had exceeded their expectations. In theory, this could generate enough energy to cut through Vesperi shields, Dr. Allen explained to Barnes during a progress briefing. "But we won't know for sure until we test it. And testing it will announce our presence to every Vesperi ship in the system. Then we only get one test," Barnes said, "when we're ready to fight." The construction pace increased as rumors spread of Vesperi patrols moving closer to their hiding place. Then, one morning, alarms sounded throughout the shipyard. "Vesperi ship approaching," announced the voice of Frank Martinez over the comm system. "Small courier class. Appears to be damaged." Barnes rushed to the command center where Martinez and Lieutenant Kelly watched the approaching vessel on their sensors. "It's running with minimal power," Kelly said. "Trajectory suggests it's drifting, not flying with purpose." Barnes considered their options. "How close will it come to our position?" "Too close," Martinez replied. "Even damage, its sensors might detect us." Barnes made a quick decision. "Lieutenant, take a team. Intercept that ship before it can report our position. If possible, capture it intact. We might learn something useful." 4 hours later, Kelly's team returned with the Vesperi courier ship in tow. They had found its crew dead, the ship damaged by what appeared to be an internal explosion. Carter led the team that examined the vessel. Inside, they discovered something unexpected: the Vesperi equivalent of navigation charts and communication protocols. "This is better than we could have hoped for," Martinez said as he began downloading the alien data. "With these codes, we could monitor their communications, maybe even send false messages." As the data transfer completed, Martinez's expression changed. "Commander, you need to see this." The Vesperi data revealed the enemy's next move: a massive fleet gathering at Alpha Centauri, preparing for a final assault on Earth's remaining defenses. Barnes studied the information grimly. How long until this fleet launches? Based on these schedules, Martinez looked up. 3 weeks, maybe less. Barnes turned to the viewport, looking at the Phoenix. It was nearly complete on the outside, but systems inside still needed work. "Then we have 3 weeks to get our ship ready for war," he said. "Tell everyone, no more breaks, no more delays. The Phoenix needs to fly." Time was running out. With just 10 days left before the Vesperi fleet would launch its attack on Earth, the Phoenix needed to be ready. The crew worked around the clock, sleeping in short shifts beside their workstations. We need to test the engines, Tanner insisted during the morning briefing. If they fail when we're facing the enemy, we're dead. Barnes nodded. How soon can we run a test? Today. The primary systems are installed. We just need to power up and see if everything holds together. The decision carried enormous risk. Even a small engine test would create an energy signature that nearby Vesperi patrols might detect. But flying an untested ship into battle would be even more dangerous. Do it, Barnes ordered. Minimal power, just enough to verify the system's work. Chief Carter put all security teams on high alert during the test. 6 hours later, the Phoenix hummed with energy for the first time. The crew gathered in the makeshift bridge, watching as Tanner initiated the startup sequence. Primary power online, she reported. Reactor output at 20%. Propulsion systems engaging in 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered slightly as the engines fired. Status displays flickered, then stabilized, showing green across most systems. It works, someone shouted, and a cheer went through the bridge. But the celebration ended abruptly when a red warning flashed on the power distribution panel. Smoke began pouring from a junction box near the reactor core. Shut it down, Tanner yelled, rushing to the panel. We've got a power surge in the main distribution node. The engines cut off, but the surge continued, threatening to reach the reactor itself. If that happened, the resulting explosion would destroy not just the Phoenix, but the entire shipyard. Tanner fought to contain the surge, rerouting power through backup systems. Her hands moved quickly across the controls, bypassing damaged circuits and creating new pathways for the energy to follow. Almost, she muttered, sweat dripping down her face. Then, with one final adjustment, the warning lights faded. The power levels dropped back to safe ranges. That was too close, Barnes said quietly. Tanner nodded, her face grim. The power system can't handle the load. We tried to integrate too many different technologies. We need to rebuild the entire distribution network. How long? A week, minimum. Maybe more. Barnes looked around at the tired faces of his crew. We don't have a week. The Vesperi fleet launches in 10 days. Before Tanner could respond, Martinez burst onto the bridge. Commander, we've intercepted a Vesperi transmission. They're attacking a refugee transport near Saturn. Over 1,000 civilians aboard. Barnes faced an impossible choice. The Phoenix wasn't ready. The power system could fail catastrophically in combat. But if they didn't help, those refugees would die. How far to Saturn? He asked. 6 hours at full thrust, Kelly replied. But Commander, the Sunforge weapon isn't stable yet. Dr. Allen says it needs more calibration. We don't have time for more calibration, Barnes said. Prepare the ship for immediate launch. We'll fix the power systems on the way. Dr. Allen approached Barnes, her expression concerned. The weapon isn't ready. If we try to use it now, the energy feedback could destroy us. Then we won't use it unless absolutely necessary, Barnes replied. But those people need our help, and we're the only ship that might stand a chance against a Vesperi destroyer. As the crew rushed to prepare for launch, Barnes took a moment alone on the bridge. The Phoenix was humanity's last hope, a warship built from mining equipment and salvaged parts. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best chance they had. 4 hours later, the Phoenix broke free from its hiding place among the asteroids, engines flaring as it accelerated toward Saturn. The untested ship, crewed by survivors and built from scrap, was heading into battle against the most powerful enemy humanity had ever faced. The Phoenix moved through space toward Saturn, its unusual shape and design making it look more like a floating piece of debris than a warship. Inside, the crew worked frantically to stabilize the power systems while preparing for battle. Approaching Saturn's orbit, Martinez announced from his communication station, I'm picking up distress signals from the refugee ship. They're under heavy fire. On the main screen, they could see the refugee transport, a converted cargo hauler, trying to escape a sleek Vesperi destroyer. The alien ship fired repeatedly, its energy weapons tearing through the transport's minimal shields. "How many people on that transport?" Barnes asked. "Sensors show approximately 1,200 life signs," Carter replied from the tactical station. "Mostly civilians, some wounded military personnel." Barnes studied the situation. The Vesperi destroyer was 3 times the size of the Phoenix, with weapons designed to take down military vessels, not civilian transports. "Lieutenant Kelly, plot an intercept course that keeps Saturn's rings between us and the Vesperi ship until the last moment. We need the element of surprise." Kelly nodded. "Course plotted, Commander." "Chief Tanner, what's the status of our power systems?" Tanner looked up from her engineering console, her face streaked with grease. "I've bypassed the damaged sections and rerouted critical systems. It's not pretty, but it should hold, as long as we don't push too hard." "And the Sunforge weapon?" Barnes asked Dr. Allen. She shook her head. "Still unstable. I wouldn't recommend using it except as a last resort." Barnes took a deep breath. "Our mission is to protect that transport and its passengers. We'll engage the Vesperi destroyer, draw its fire away from the civilians, and give them time to escape." The Phoenix accelerated, using Saturn's rings as cover. Ice particles and small rocks pinged against the hull as they moved through the debris field. "Vesperi ship hasn't detected us yet," Carter reported. "Their focus is still on the transport." "Weapons status?" Barnes asked. "Conventional weapons at 80%. Missile tubes loaded and ready." Barnes gripped the arms of his command chair. "On my mark, break cover and target the Vesperi's main weapons array. Hit them hard and fast before they can react." The crew tensed as the Phoenix reached its attack position. Through gaps in the ring system, they could see the Vesperi destroyer continuing its assault on the helpless transport. "Now," Barnes ordered. The Phoenix burst from Saturn's rings, engines flaring as it charged toward the much larger Vesperi vessel. Missile tubes opened, launching a barrage of modified mining explosives toward the enemy ship. The Vesperi destroyer seemed momentarily confused by the sudden appearance of the unknown vessel. Its weapons paused their attack on the transport, giving the civilian ship precious seconds to increase its distance. Then the missiles struck. Explosions bloomed along the destroyer's hull, damaging its weapon emplacements. The Vesperi ship turned, bringing its undamaged weapons to bear on this new threat. "They're targeting us," Carter announced. "Multiple energy weapons charging." "Evasive maneuvers," Barnes ordered. "Keep moving. Don't give them a clean shot." The Phoenix twisted and turned, its unconventional engine arrangement allowing it to move in ways no standard ship could match. Several Vesperi energy blasts missed completely. Others glanced off the strange fractal hull design, causing less damage than expected. But the Vesperi ship was powerful. A direct hit rocked the Phoenix, sending crew members flying across the bridge. "Port side hull breach," Tanner shouted. "Sealing emergency bulkheads." Another hit caused the lights to flicker. Power fluctuations rippled through the ship. "We can't take much more of this," Kelly warned. Barnes looked at the tactical display. The refugee transport was still too close, still within range of the Vesperi's weapons. "Dr. Allen, we need the Sunforge," Barnes said grimly. "It's our only option. If we use it now, the feedback could destroy the ship," she protested. "If we don't use it, everyone on that transport dies," Barnes replied. "Charge the weapon." As the Phoenix continued its desperate evasive maneuvers, Dr. Allen began the dangerous process of activating their untested superweapon, knowing it might save the refugees or destroy them all. Dr. Allen's fingers moved quickly over the Sunforge controls as the Phoenix shook from another direct hit. Warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. "Power systems failing," Tanner reported. "We've lost engines 3 and 4. Lieutenant Kelly struggled with the navigation controls. "We're drifting. Can't maintain evasive pattern." The Vesperi destroyer, sensing weakness, moved in for the kill, its main weapons powered up for a final devastating shot. "Sunforge at 60% charge," Dr. Allen called out. "I need more time." "We don't have more time," Barnes replied, watching the enemy ship approach. Then he saw something in the tactical display, a dense cluster of ice and rock in Saturn's rings. "Lieutenant Kelly, can you get us to those larger ice formations?" Kelly nodded. "Maybe, with the remaining engines." "Do it. Full power to the rear shields." The Phoenix limped toward the ice field, taking more hits as it moved. Inside the ship, crew members fought to contain fires and seal hull breaches. In the engine room, Tanner and her team worked desperately to keep the remaining power systems online. "Sunforge at 80%, Dr. Allen reported, but the containment field is fluctuating. I can't stabilize it." Lieutenant Kelly called out, "We've reached the ice field, Commander. Cut all power except life support and the Sunforge," Barnes ordered. "Let us drift." The Phoenix went dark, appearing as just another chunk of ice and metal among the debris. The Vesperi ship slowed its approach, sensors scanning for their target. "They're still looking for us," Carter said quietly, "but they're having trouble distinguishing our hull from the surrounding debris." Barnes turned to Dr. Allen. "Status of the Sunforge. 95% charge, but the containment field won't hold for a firing sequence." Her eyes showed both fear and determination. "There's only one way to make this work. Someone needs to manually adjust the field parameters during firing." "That would expose them to lethal radiation," Tanner protested. "Yes," Dr. Allen said simply. Before anyone could respond, Lieutenant Kelly stood. "I'll do it." Barnes started to object, but Kelly cut him off. "With respect, Commander, I'm the most familiar with the system. I helped install it." The bridge fell silent. Finally, Barnes nodded. "The moment they locate us, we'll have one shot. Make it count." Kelly followed Dr. Allen to the Sunforge control room. Through the viewport, they could see the Vesperi ship moving slowly through the ice field, getting closer to their position. "They'd found us," Carter announced suddenly. "They're locking weapons." "Now, Lieutenant," Barnes ordered. In the control room, Kelly moved to the manual override panel. As Dr. Allen initiated the firing sequence, he began adjusting the containment field, his hands exposed to the growing energy field. The Phoenix seemed to gather light from nowhere, energy building along its unusual hull. The Vesperi ship fired, its beam heading straight for the Phoenix. A second before impact, the Sunforge released its energy. A blinding beam shot from the Phoenix, cutting through space and striking the Vesperi destroyer. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy ship's shields failed, and the beam sliced through its hull like paper. The Vesperi destroyer broke apart, secondary explosions rippling through its structure until nothing remained but floating debris. On the Phoenix's bridge, the crew watched in stunned silence. "It worked," Martins whispered. "It actually worked." "The refugee ship?" Barnes asked. "Clear of the battle zone. They're safe," Carter confirmed. Barnes nodded, relief washing over his face. Then Tanner's voice came over the comm, her tone urgent. "Medical team to the Sunforge control room immediately." They found Lieutenant Kelly collapsed beside the control panel, radiation burns covering his hands and face. Dr. Allen worked frantically to stabilize him. "Did we get them?" Kelly asked weakly as Barnes knelt beside him. "We got them," Barnes assured him. "You saved over 1,000 people today." As the medical team took Kelly to the infirmary, Barnes returned to the bridge. The Phoenix was damaged, with systems failing across the ship, but it had done what no one thought possible. It had defeated a Vesperi warship. Barnes opened a channel to the refugee transport. "This is Commander Eric Barnes of the Phoenix. We're here to escort you to safety." "Phoenix," came the surprised reply. "Where did you come from? What kind of ship is that?" Barnes looked around at his exhausted but proud crew, then at the patchwork vessel they had built from nothing but scrap and determination. "The kind that's going to take back our solar system," he answered, "one battle at a time."